Craft Brewed Sports Cincinnati Style is brought to you by Dugout Mugs. We got the hookup for you. Just go to dugoutmugs.online/craft for 10% off your entire order. That's it. No need to use a code. Just use that link, and the 10% off will be added directly to your order. That's dugoutmugs.online/craft.
Craft Brewed Sports Cincinnati Style is also brought to you by More Labs. Drink one bottle of morning recovery while you're partying and bounce back quickly the next morning. Guaranteed. Go to morelabs.com and use the code SPORTS at checkout for 20% off your non-subscription purchase.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another edition of Craft Brewed Sports Cincinnati Style. I am Mike. With me as always is Scott. Joe over there behind the computers, back this week. Joe, how you feeling?
What it do, baby?
Good to have you back, man. I'm glad you're there because I don't like sitting in that chair. I much prefer being over here. Scott, how you feeling, man?
Feeling good. Real good.
This is Craft Brewed Sports Cincinnati Style. I mean, for those of you that have never listened to the show before,
you have
no idea what that
funny.
drop
You're like,
is, but
what?
God, it's so good. It's so well done, so thank you for that, Scott. We have an awesome show for you guys tonight. We're going to talk about Cincinnati's future quarterback, Joe Burrow.
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean...
Ish. But he doesn't like the local stuff. He
I
hates
got-
Kenwood Mall. What a douche, man.
I got feelings about that,
Like,
man.
what other mall is there, man? This dude's still holding on to Tri-County. What a loser.
I kind of hate Kenwood Mall, too. Anyways, we're also going to talk about FC
story.
Cincinnati. We're going to talk about FC Cincinnati. And I went deep into the MLS draft to try to figure out what happens with this MLS draft, because it is weird. It's a bizarre thing. As a new MLS fan, I wanted to get into that. So we're going to talk FC Cincinnati's moves.
Xavier sucks again.
Well, you know, that's how that goes. And also, UC is doing great, because that's what happens in this city. When one team is terrible, the other one is fantastic.
And we gonna do that hockey, because that's what we do. Week in, week out. All the hockey updates right here on Cincinnati Style.
If you have never listened to an entire episode, if you have stopped midway through, you've I'll get back to that later, and you've never heard Scott do that hockey, fast forward right now
I
to
feel
the
you're
end.
ambitious, halfway. Wow, they've made it halfway. I'd be impressed. But if you haven't made it to hockey talk, that's the key. If you're like, the intro was good enough for me, I'm out. But you've never.
We
you've never read
appreciate
hockey.
that. We appreciate the
Right.
view. We
Yes,
appreciate the
absolutely.
listen. Go listen to that hocky talk,
Right.
because good Lord, is it fantastic. And
So professional.
And Marvel
depth?
Weekend? Oh.
Whoa!
Spoil!
Whoa!
Spoiler alert!
Man!
Sorry.
Whoa!
Sorry.
Giving up all the goods. Now they don't have to fast forward.
No, they
All right,
still
well,
have
we'll
to.
see you next week. I'll do that hockey next week because Mike just ruined it all. So
We'll just edit that out. Just edit that, Joe. Edit point right there.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thanks.
and all right, let's go. Craft Brewed Sports, Cincinnati Style. Here
Thank
we
you
are.
guys for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. Share the show with your friends. Help us out. Get it out to all of your Cincinnati sports fans. Let's get right into Bengals talk, because the NFL rules everything, and you have to talk about football or else people don't want to listen to your sports show. So let's talk about the Bengals.
But not really. Let's talk about a college player instead. We're talking about the Bengals-ish.
Okay, so you mentioned this has to be the Bengals pick at number one. You have to take Joe Burrow at number one if you are Mike Brown in the Cincinnati Bengals.
I just think that in a perfect world, if the Bengals were in a better position, but yet still finished, and that's crazy to think where you're a better position, but I guess basically if they were okay at the quarterback position, if Andy Dalton was even, let's say 5 years younger, let's just go 5 years. Let's not even go crazy let's say, if he's a rookie or whatever. Let's go 5 years younger. I do believe that Chase Young is the best player in this draft, But if you're the Bengals, you absolutely have no choice but to draft Burrow because he's a local kid. He's a quarterback. He put up all these stats. He won the Heisman. Like, if you're the Bengals, you don't have any other option but to make this pick. And we talked about it last week. If somebody blows them away with an offer to go up to number one because they fall in love with Burrow and they want to give you, this year's one and a bunch, further. Like, if they blow you away with an offer, fine. The fans could be justified with it. But there is no way that with the way the attendance is in Cincinnati and with everything surrounding who Burrow is, where he's from, jersey sales, all of that, him being a quarterback, that you don't. Dude, you just have to.
I saw a billboard on 71 today on my way home from work that said, Athens, Ohio thanks you, Joe Burrow. I was like,
I saw it on
seriously?
the way to work this morning at 3 a.m. and thought, wow.
So there was
Athens paid for that.
There were two things that went through my head. Number one, thanks Athens for the money, I guess, because
sure,
cool.
Right.
Also, did they realize Joe Burrow's not here? He's not seeing this billboard. Like, it's just Bengals fans that are like, oh, yeah, that's the guy we're supposed to get. Cool. Why would you pay for that billboard?
It was a very weird flex.
It was super weird.
But again, it all ties into this. The Browns, who are all about money, and you think about jersey sales, like, who sells more jerseys? Quarterbacks. He's the local kid. Like, there's so much that you can package and sell. Like, from the marketing department. The marketing department alone is like, yeah, we're taking Joe Burrow.
Please take Joe Burrow.
And Chase Young, it's funny because Chase Young, who's an Ohio State guy, there's almost as much of a, selling point, but when you factor in quarterback, it's like, it trumps everything, and when this team is in need of it. Like, again, if Andy Dalton was 5 years younger and playing like he was during their playoff days, you could make an argument where you're like, all right, this team is in a position where they don't necessarily need a quarterback, and while Burrow is there, and maybe you can trade. Like, you're in a position, you just take the best overall player, and that happens to be Young, and I truly believe that Young is the best player.
Yeah.
But the Bengals need a quarterback. He's the local kid. He has all these accolades. Like, this is like as slam dunk of a first overall pick as you're ever going to get. This is more slam dunk than when they took Carson Palmer.
The only way I would like the Bengals to not take Burrow is if the Dolphins offered all of their first round picks for the number one overall.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. Like, if somebody comes to you and blows you away with an offer.
But that's the only one.
Sure.
There's nobody else that, like, if somebody's like, we'll give you our first and our second and maybe our second next year. Nah, hard pass. Give me Burrow in that situation. If the Dolphins were like, all three of our first round, they have 3 first round picks.
Well, my guess is that they wouldn't offer up all 3. I would say
they're not going to offer up any because their whole plan was tank for Tua, and they can get Tua at 5. So they're like, this worked out fantastic.
But can they? Because
they can.
Because the Lions at 3 are the big question mark. And a good buddy of mine who's a Lions fan, and him and I talk almost every day about the NFL. He straight up asked me, and him being a Lions fan, I was like, this is weird that he's asking me, but he's like, do you think the Lions take Tua? And I thought for a moment, and I'm like, it's a very interesting question if you're the Lions, because Matthew Stafford is in the twilight of his career. They're clearly not going to win a Super Bowl with Stafford. Like, Stafford was a very good quarterback and is capable of winning a Super Bowl, but the time has passed with this franchise, and by the time they get to where they want to be, like, Stafford's going to be gone or it will be not capable anymore. So it's a really weird spot. And all of the draft projections and trade scenarios suggest that Miami is going to have to move up to that 3rd spot so that not only does Detroit not take him, like they make it so that Detroit's like, all right, well, we've got so many needs, because Detroit, much like the Bengals, they've got a billion needs. So it's like, while they would love to maybe sit there and just take Tua if nobody offers them a lot, like if Miami comes up and says, we'll give you 2 of these picks or whatever, like they have to take it because they've got so many needs. But if you're Miami, you also ensure that nobody else does, because there's other quarterback needy teams that could go to the Lions and be like, hey, we'll give you this. So if you're Miami, you kind of are forced into that position of you've got to move up to that Lions position to get it. Bengals are very happy that they're not in that position. Like
Yeah.
the Bengals finished exactly where they needed to finish.
Right.
Had they finished not in they all of a sudden lose all of that leverage.
If
Like,
the Bengals don't finish where they finish, they end up with Jake Fromm and or Herbert from Oregon. That's the other.
And don't get me wrong, like I love Fromm. And I think Herbert is going to be okay, but neither of them projects to be like anything like of a difference maker. Like those two project to be good if everything goes right.
All right, so let's talk about Burrow. Clearly, he's the overwhelming number 1 overall pick. Everybody thinks he should go number 1. He set ridiculous records, but he doesn't like Skyline Chili. And is that going to factor into Mike Brown's decision? Because this dude came out and was like, Skyline Chili is trash.
I was just going to say, it's not even that he doesn't like Skyline Chili. He dumped on it.
Do you think it's because he's only had Columbus Skyline Chili? Because I think there's going to be a difference. If you're only having Skyline Chili in Columbus on OSU's campus, there's a difference.
Isn't he from Athens? Don't they got the chilies over there?
Not as good. I mean, it's not Cincinnati Skyline. Like, you got to get it. You're getting it right from the teat down here in Cincinnati. You can't have that outsourced Skyline Chili, that franchise Skyline Chili.
Isn't there a Skyline in Florida?
Yeah, there is.
Like, I was going to say, they'd be like getting Skyline in Florida. I'm like, this is the real thing. Nah.
Real Cincinnati style down here in Fort Lauderdale.
Right.
I think it is in Fort Lauderdale, actually.
I was going to say, all I know is there's one in Florida. I couldn't tell you where it was located.
Do you think so? I've seen fans posting this week on social media about how they're upset at the fact that Joe Burrow doesn't like Skyline Chili. Are Cincinnati Bengals fans that crazy?
Yes.
That they would turn on.
No, stop. Yes. Like, the answer is yes.
But this is a dude that could change the course of the franchise, and instead they're like, he doesn't like our chili. Screw him.
Get him out of here. But in all seriousness, my only hang up with Burrow is just the simple fact that, at Ohio State, he didn't get it done. He had to transfer. And then coming into this year, he wasn't one of the guys that were like, oh, hey, watch him. He's going to be on. He wasn't
learning
a Heisman
new
watch
offense.
guy.
I'm going to give him a learning new offense last year.
And that's fine. Like, I mean, like, you could do it. You could say whatever you want.
I will justify this to hell.
No. And that's fine. I'm saying, like, I'm just, like, playing devil's advocate. The only, like, pause I have is, again, I think Chase Young is just the best overall player, like, throwing out all the accolades, just football player.
Yeah.
But Chase Young, obviously, you're not talking about a huge drop-off. It's not like, oh, well, Chase Young's just the best quarterback because the quarterbacks are elevated. But no, I still think Chase Young is probably a top 5 guy regardless of the position. And again, if you're the Bengals, you don't have much of a choice. But, there's just some pauses with Burrow where it's like, despite him putting up all those numbers, you can, like, second-guess some of the stuff. And so I don't know. I think that the Bengals do end up taking him. I think he'll be fine. I just don't know. Like, I don't really know what to expect from him. It's weird.
Do you want him to sit here and learn from Dalton, or is he a play right away guy?
No, I would put him. I feel like every quarterback
you have to have him sit.
Yeah, every quarterback that comes in, even if they are the number 1 overall, I know that the temptation is put this guy on the field because he sells jerseys. He's the logo, like whatever angle.
We've moved on to a different era when it comes to.
Have we though?
Yes, because once upon a time, Aaron Rodgers sat for 3 years
before.
Right. He took
but I'm saying we're not to the point where that guy on a terrible team,
right?
That guy, that number 1 overall pick, goes. But maybe that's because Cleveland gets that so often.
Well, no. But what we are in is an era of guys who are drafted in the first round at some point during their freshman year in the NFL, they're in there.
They get the call. Yeah.
And I'm saying, if you started Ryan Finley at week 8 of this year, there's a 0% chance that Joe Burrow sits the entire year as a first-round draft pick when Finley was a fourth round pick. So, I mean, that's where it's like, well, if you're not starting him from the word go, what are you waiting on?
All right, so we trade Dalton, we start Finley, but let Burrow.
But Dalton, you're just probably going to let go. Like, I don't even think there's a scenario where Dalton comes back.
He's got a year left. He's under team control for another year.
I understand that, but I'm saying is they're going to let him go because the money is too much to be paying him to when you're going to be putting Burrow in
I think there's enough teams that have a need for a quarterback right now that you can.
Oh wait, hold on. Now you're giving the Bengals enough credit to leverage anything.
That's a good point. It's Mike Brown. No. Yeah, Mike Brown's just gonna be like. Mike Brown's gonna be like, well, I don't know. What does it take?
There are 2 options for Mike Brown. You pay him or you don't pay him. And not paying him sounds good to Mike. all the time. So
Good old Mike B. Wait, I don't have to open up this checkbook? All right, cool. Yeah, we're going to do
hey,
that.
man, I can get off the hook for free. Bye-bye. So, yeah, I mean, I think that if they draft Joe Burrow, like, the absolute worst case scenario is he's starting week 2. Like, absolute worst case scenario. And that's
Well,
just because,
and if you think about what the fans did this year,
Right.
like what we saw this year, I mean, week 1, the fans were clamoring for Finley to start. So
Sure.
the fans are going to be yelling for Burrow anyways.
And that's what I'm saying. I mean, Finley was a 4th round quarterback, and the fans wanted to see him. There's no way that anybody's going to have any patience where it's like, oh, no, Joe can sit a year or he can sit a few weeks. Like, they're going to be like, well, we're a shit team anyway. Throw him to the wolves. Like, F it.
This is going to be a Zach Taylor real test, though, because he's a quarterback's coach. He's supposed to be a good quarterback guru. Let's see how quickly you can develop Joe Burrow.
And that's the other part of this equation is a guy who knows
Burrow.
a guy who knows quarterbacks and who's coached quarterbacks. And that was perfect timing for that.
17.2% beer.
Yeah. It's like, how does he evaluate him? Because it's like, so everybody nationally and it's like a slam dunk, but it's like, what does the guy who knows quarterbacks think about this quarterback?
I would ask him, but my son's soccer league is well done, and I don't have the chance to talk to him anymore, and we didn't make that friendship.
And let's be fair, even if you had, he wouldn't give you a straight answer, and he would be like, he's good. Very good. And that would be it. So, I mean, it's not like you would give a clear answer on him anyway. He's good. He's real good. So, you know, that's not really a measuring stick either.
Zach Taylor, how do you feel about Joe Burrow?
Oh, good.
Zach,
real good.
Zach Taylor, how do you feel about Skyline Chili?
Good. Feel real good.
Good talk.
Zach Taylor, how do you feel about Kenwood Mall?
Good. Feel real good.
I was kind of hoping Joe would play the drink responsibly drop there. That would have been perfect.
I don't have it on this board.
Like, how do you feel about the mall? Drink responsibly. But anyway, yeah, I mean, because like that's the key ingredient here, right? It's like, so the fans think Burrow, you know, the national media thinks Burrow, like, but really what it comes down to, well, I say that it's what the coach thinks, but I guess it's what the Browns think, and the Browns money wise are gonna be like, it's quarterback, he's gonna sell jerseys, whatever. But I'm curious if you got, you know, Taylor in a room and we're like, all right, there's no cameras around, none of this is gonna get out. Give me your complete honest assessment of what you think of Joe Burrow and where you would take, like, would you take him with this first overall pick, or would you prefer to like maneuver, like, who do you think the best player in this draft is, like what he would say? Because I mean, he's the one that has to live with it, right? So I mean, if he thinks, I guess the answer is if he thinks he's the best quarterback, then that's all that matters.
Which, I mean, if you look at the quarterbacks coming out, he's the best quarterback, right?
But okay,
he's the best quarterback.
But what if prior to the injury, he thought Tua was the best? Like, and then the injury happens, like because I mean, coming into this year, Tua was the guy.
And
like,
then
I mean,
Tua
like,
went Bo Jackson on us,
right? And so I mean, like, there's that the cloud becomes over. But I mean, it could be a situation where you're looking at it 5 years from now, and say Miami trades up to number 3, they get Tua, who they were tanking for all along, and he ends up being the better of the two, and it's like, well, you know, the Bengals screwed up because they thought.
Is Joe Burrow going to be our Achilles Smith again? Like, is he going to be the new Achilles Smith?
I mean, I don't think that he's gonna, like, I don't think that Joe, like, I think his floor isn't that bad. Like, I think, you know, his floor is somewhere like better than Achilles Smith, because Achilles Smith was a complete disaster.
On a scale of Achilles Smith to Andy Dalton, where do you think Joe Burrow falls? He's got to be above Dalton, right?
Okay, a better way to look at this. So Alex Smith for the 49ers was the first overall pick. He was fine. But in that draft, Aaron Rodgers was the kingpin of that draft, who went, what, 25th, 26th, somewhere around there in the draft? Like, that's what you're looking at, where it's like, the Niners weren't ultimately disappointed. Alex Smith was fine, but fine isn't what you're looking for when you have the number 1 overall pick. And I think in 5 years, if you're looking back at it and it's like, oh, well, the Bengals could have drafted Tua obviously he had the injury issues, but like they could have had him because they had the first pick of the draft, but they went Joe Burrow because of all these safe reasons. Like, was it a mistake? Like, that's what you're ultimately looking at, where it's like Joe Burrow's good enough, but he's not great.
And when we're talking Bengals, it will be a mistake. No matter what happens, it will be a mistake. They will screw this up. Let's talk some UC basketball.
Hell of a transition.
It's always a mistake with the Bengals. It doesn't matter. It's a
true.
mistake every single time. So UC basketball is balling out lately. They have they're 3-1 in conference play, 10-6 overall, but some of those losses are actually to pretty good teams. Like Ohio State, they have a bad loss to a Xavier team, but they are actually playing pretty well.
It's so true.
That was pretty well done, right? That was pretty well done. That was pretty well done. Yeah.
Oh God, Xavier who
we
just
didn't
finished up losing to Marquette as we're speaking.
Great
by
Oh,
20
fantastic.
points.
Oh, good. They are
God,
are
man.
killing it. So, anyways, UC they beat UCF on Saturday. They beat Tulsa. So this team is a team that is like really clicking at this point. Like it's so funny how the Crosstown Shootout teams, the Xavier and UC always diverge.
I was
going to
say
Shootout.
it really is
One like
it's the breaking point.
Yeah,
no
and
matter
they hit their stride. The other one completely falls apart after the shootout.
Right.
And this year, UC loses the shootout, but they are on the right track. I mean, overall record isn't that great, but they're also in a position to run through their conference and make the tournament. Xavier is going to be a bubble team at this point. If that.
Yeah.
You can't beat Marquette. You're going to lose by 20 to Marquette. UC is I know how the shootout shook out. UC is the better team right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's frustrating if you're a fan of Xavier, which we are, because it's like, this win should propel them to greater heights, but instead, I have no idea what Xavier is other than not good on any given game. And UC, I mean, you got to win the games in front of you, and they're doing that.
UC is doing exactly what they need to do, and again, they're going to go through their conference. There's nobody in the American that's real. I mean, Memphis is the team that's going to be a test for UC coming up against Memphis.
But even
that without who was the dude that got suspended from Memphis and ended up was just like, nah, whatever, I'm out, I'm done. Penny Hardaway's dude.
Right, yeah, I know, and I'm blanking on his name.
But without him, is Memphis even a team that's a threat at this point? Like, UC is in a prime position now for the American that they can really make a run at this.
Yeah, I mean, it's an ironic twist of fate based on the way the year started, and then again the matchup between the two schools in Cincinnati. But if you're a Bearcats fan, you feel much better about your team and the prospects through the rest of the season. If you're UC, you're playing with house money, right? Like, this year was supposed to be kind of an off year. You lose your head coach.
You got a first-year head coach. You
lost a
Memphis
few guys.
is the team to beat.
Right.
They're likely going to be and
Xavier came in ranked to start the season.
Yep.
Things were supposed to be really well, and they've gone the opposite direction. Like, if I'm UC, it's like, we may at the end of the year, like, it may just be whatever. We may only be one and done in the tournament, but you feel a lot better about the way the season went. Whereas Xavier, it's like, Jesus, right now, going to scramble to make the tournament and pray to play a game. I mean, you're hoping to not be in the NIT right now. Like, that's
instead
where the two programs
instead
are.
UC's got Wichita State is the team in the American at this point. They are 15-1. They're ranked in the top 20. You got Memphis is in the top 25, but barely at this point. So UC has a good test against Memphis coming up. We will see how this team does in that game. That's at Memphis too, so it's a road game. So you can kind of chalk that up as, even if you lose this one, if it looks good, that's
They're
a
fine.
good. There's nothing to worry about on the road.
Outside of an extended losing streak, like, they'll be fine the rest of the way. Like, they just will be.
I have no
'Cause
doubt.
at very worst, they'll finish second in the conference. And I mean, I don't know how many, like, that's the only problem is you don't know how many representatives they're going to get based on how everything shakes out. Like, they could end up being a bubble team just because they only
Because
take
the AAC is only a
the-
one bid conference.
right. So
Yeah.
it's like Memphis goes, and so then maybe but
Wichita State. Well, okay, so that's the thing. You got Wichita State and Memphis both in the top 25 from the AAC. So those are like the teams from the
right.
From the
So
AAC.
there's like max is they're getting 2 teams. And if you're not one of those 2 teams, but I think UC is capable of being one of those 2 teams, right? I mean,
absolutely.
like there's no like craziness to think, oh well, finishing in the top 2 is like out of line. Like no, they definitely can be one of those.
They're
top
currently
2 teams.
3rd in the conference
So-
right now. So if you make a deep run in the AAC tournament, well, there's nothing that says you would likely be left out.
Whereas Xavier, where things currently stand, could make a good run in the Big East tournament and still end up on the outside looking in because they're like middle to bottom of the pack right now. And there's at least 5 teams that have a better claim to the Big East.
Should we talk Xavier then, since we're already kind of talking Xavier, because that's how we do. Go ahead and talk Xavier at this point. We don't even deserve a transition at this point. Those teams
In
are
threes at record pace.
Hey, let's just 3-point shot. What the hell is happening, man?
I don't know, man.
What are we doing? Like, this team is... I don't understand why you continually try to shoot the 3. The team is... It's so frustrating to watch the Xavier team play. It is so frustrating.
There's no cohesiveness. They've now dropped 3 in a row. And 4
And
of
games
their,
they shouldn't have lost
right, and
either.
4 of their last 5. Like, it's been horrendous. Like, in all of the games, it's always the same, where you're like, there's one guy who's doing something, and the rest of the team looks awful.
So I have
as a combination, you're like, what's the plan here?
I have to ask then. This begs the question: did Xavier finally whiff on a coaching hire? Because
It's
because
interesting
since
that you're
we've
asking
been
that,
there,
because this is the first time I think in the 3 coaching changes that we've had since we got there. You went from Mata to Miller, and Miller to
Mac.
and
then Mac.
Right,
So
so there's
it kept it in house. It was, we're going to promote up the assistant,
and
we're
they
going to
had
keep
their
the same
transition year,
philosophy,
but by
and
that second year, it was like
it
clear
was
that you made
running
the right choice.
They were on the
And before this year, I had people already saying, I don't know if this was the right hire.
and that's exactly like last year. I was like, it's his first year. Relax.
I just
but
ignored it.
now I'm starting to question. It's a crappy place to be in, where you're starting to question a dude in his second year.
Well-
and admittedly, that's because of how the previous coaches, and it's not necessarily fair to judge somebody based on the previous coaches, but you also had a top 25. It was a 15th ranked team coming into this year.
Well-
and you're losing to freaking Seton Hall.
I'll also give him slight credit in that, the other 2 times you're talking about coming in the A-10. So it wasn't like there wasn't the pressure of the Big East.
That's
and
fair,
like,
but
it's
it's not the same
No, I was
Big
gonna say,
East
but
that-
on the flip side of that coin, it's that you guys have regressed. It's not just that like there is no cohesiveness in this team. It's like Quentin Gooden. Like, what the hell has happened to him since his freshman year? Like, he's not even the same guy he was 2 years ago. Like, that's a problem. Like, when guys, you got guys that aren't progressing. You got guys that, can't, like, there's no, like, symmetry to this team at all. And then guys that were decent or, like, at least had a promising future have regressed or haven't made any improvements. And that's where I kind of pause and think, like, as much as I want to support Steele, like, it's pretty telling.
Dude,
Like,
we talked about it when we first started doing the Cincinnati style show. The out of conference schedule was essentially garbage.
Right.
Like, when we looked at it, we were like, this is a terrible. You are putting all your eggs in this Big East basket.
Sure.
And you're 1-4 in the conference so far. That's terrible.
Which makes all of the games that they won prior to that look like
It's
absolute nothing.
great. And even if you look at the ones that they lost out of conference, those were the only named teams.
Right.
Like, everybody that they beat is outside of UC, which is now shaping up to be a fantastic win.
Are we the Patriots? Are we the Patriots, or just fool's gold? Like, you get to all these wins and it's like, oh yeah, but all we did was beat
The
up on
difference
the
is we're not going
Dolphins.
to get to all those wins.
Yeah,
Xavier's
right.
not going to get to all those wins. If you can't beat Seton Hall, you can't beat St. John's. Like, these are teams that you should be. Oh, they did beat St. John's. Sorry, I looked wrong. You can't beat Creighton. At home, that's the other thing. Creighton
Yeah,
is always
losing
that
home
team.
games.
Creighton is always that team. Do you remember when Cintas Center was like, you can't lose at Cintas?
Dude, it
You
was
did not lose at Cintas.
Dude, they were a top 4 team in the country as far as home, like court advantage and like wins with it. Yeah, and now it's like, oh, the Cintas Center is just another place.
You know
to
what
play.
sucks the most too? As terrible as it is as a Xavier fan to see UC going on the right trajectory after the Crosstown Shootout, the worst part is that Dayton is friggin' killing it this year. In the top 20, they're what, like top 15 at this point? I know UC fans and Xavier fans, they have their beef. We've talked about it before that
Dayton is
the rival
right?
because when we were at Xavier A10 playing Dayton twice a year and then playing them in the A10, that was the rivalry. The UC game was nice to win, but it didn't really matter. As long as you beat Dayton twice a year, that's all that really mattered.
They're 15-2.
They're 13 in the country right now. Dayton is 13 in the country, and we can't beat.
Dude, if Xavier played Dayton right now, they would get
Dayton
housed.
would wax us.
Housed.
Wax us.
It wouldn't even be close.
Even at the Cintas Center where Dayton hasn't won, since Jimmy Carter? Was that
that's
it?
Yeah. Thank God they haven't played.
Good
we haven't
Lord.
played them at Cintas Center because that streak would be done.
What?
bad.
There is. Dayton played Kansas.
And
who
only
was
lost
number
by
4 at the
6.
time and lost by 6.
That's one of their 2 losses.
Their
It's
other
to
loss
Kansas.
was to Colorado, which is that's a weird loss at that point. But even that's like a close game, 78-76. Good Lord, that is brutal to see Dayton succeed. All right, so if you're a Xavier fan and you see Dayton succeeding, you see UC playing well, and Xavier is just mired in this BS, we can't win a game. Like, I mean,
Makes you pine for the A10 days all of a sudden.
God, if we can only beat George Washington right now.
Go on a run. It's like, all right, we got George Washington, St. Joe's, and who else we got? But we're going to run through them, and then the momentum's going to carry us right into the tournament. And instead, it's like, man, I'm like, playoffs? I'm just trying to win a game.
At this point as a Xavier fan, I want to get to the NIT. I don't even think that's going to happen. I don't feel confident about an NIT bid.
Are they going to seed us in the Big East? Are they going to be like, this is first year we're just excluding some teams? Xavier, you're not in the Big East tournament.
Y'all just
First time, we're just going to drop the bottom 2 and y'all are out.
You can come to New York and hang out, but you're not playing. You're just gonna watch. You can sit with James Dolan.
That's where I feel like we're at. Just like, did the biggest tournament. We just happy to be here.
Tell you what, you guys pick a couple guys they could shoot a half court shot for some scratchers. That's what you get to do at Madison Square Garden.
It's sad, but it's frustrating watching the games. Like it's like you see the talent, and you're like, well, this team should be good, but as a unit, they're just not. They're not. There's no arguing it. They're bad.
I hate to say it in year 2, but I feel like Steele. This is and I even said it when Steele got hired. I told a bunch of buddies where I was like, guys, we're due for a miss. Like you had Mata, you hired Miller, that worked out. You hired Mack, that worked out.
Well, I think when I said Xavier was due for a miss, and I had the same conversations.
I mean, statistically speaking.
Well,
eventually, it had to happen.
Not only that, it was, again, you go back to all of those guys, the expectations and the transition was in a conference such that you're not asked to necessarily do a whole lot. Now this switch happens in the Big East, and I know the Big
Max
East
did it in the Big East too.
Wasn't that? I thought that was just before the switch to the Big East.
I think Mac had at least a year in the Big East, right? It was at least a year or 2 in the Big East.
No. When
Miller
left, when
he got hired, yes, yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
Right.
He made the transition
Right,
from being the assistant to the head coach in the A10.
In the A10, yes.
And what I'm saying is, I know that this Big East isn't what the Big East was considered, but it's still a step up from where they were. And they quote unquote did their national search, or they explored options outside of doing the traditional Xavier hire. And it was the first time where I thought,
their national
Yeah.
search. It's such bull.
no, but I'm saying like they did like there were other names.
I would
that got
love to see who
thrown
they
about.
interviewed. Yeah, I would love to see who they interviewed.
I mean, whether or not they actually did, but there were other names that were in the mix. It wasn't just a slam dunk like, oh, the up and comer on the staff has this job. It was the first time since we've been there where it wasn't like, yeah, it's a foregone conclusion. We were just grooming the next guy and we know this guy's a date. It was, well, Steele's in the mix, but we're going to look at some of these other options, whether or not they were legit.
But also, we're going to go with Steele because that's what we do here at Xavier's.
Sure.
We just promote up the next guy.
But they had and it's the first time where it was just like, I mean, this is a risky move because of where they're at. And maybe that's not a game you can play anymore because you're in the Big Leagues.
No,
maybe
you
have
gotta
to go get somebody.
You have to get somebody
who can take that next
I
step.
hate saying
and
that
just somebody's
because
outside of the program.
I hate saying that because Steele's been here for so long, but
Right.
you might not be the guy. Let's talk some FC Cincinnati because it's been a while since we talked some soccer, and I got in depth as it comes to FC Cincinnati. I don't even think we don't even have a audio. Good work, Joe. Way to produce this show.
Better
Fantastic.
than the one we had for Xavier because they didn't even deserve an intro.
They don't deserve an intro. So the 2020 MLS Super Draft was this week. The MLS Draft is ridiculously confusing. Like, if you thought following professional soccer outside of the United States was a confusing thing anyways, the MLS Super Draft is it's insane. There were teams that passed. You can pass in the draft. You could just be like, nah, we're not going to take a pick. Thanks. We'll sit this one out. I saw that happen multiple times. FC Cincinnati had the number 3 pick in the 2020 MLS Super Draft. They traded that pick to the new Miami expansion team for $150,000.
That's so weird that you can trade a pick for just straight up cash.
Just like, how much you want to pay for this pick? $100,000. But it's only $150,000. That's not even anything. That's nothing. That seems like nothing. So I had to reach out because I'm new to being an MLS fan, and I'm reading through all this going, what the hell is happening? Like, why are you trading the number 3 overall pick? So a buddy of mine who is a Columbus Crew fan, who has been a big MLS fan since the Crew came, he broke it down for me. He pointed out that there's actually been talk that the MLS wants to do away with the draft altogether because once you get to, like, only college kids are eligible for the draft. You're only able to take, like, NCAA players.
Okay.
If you're a 22-year-old NCAA player, you're playing in college.
You're not going to the MLS.
I mean, you're going to the MLS, but you're not very good.
Well, yeah, okay.
Like
That's what I'm saying. Like,
if you're a good player,
Right.
you left high school or you graduated high school
Right,
and you
that's-
went overseas to play
that's what I
professionally.
mean. Like,
you're
you're
not. So there has actually been talk where the MLS has been like, do we even need a draft? Like, should we even do a draft? But FC Cincinnati did participate. They forwent their first round pick, and they actually took that money and used that for a trade that they made with Atlanta and brought somebody in on that one. However, Joe's actually bringing up the non-designated player salary is an average of $345,000.
So basically,
so
like
half of what they're making. Yeah.
You trade
well,
that.
so that's the top, the average, and so you're paying, this guy might, that's decent money then.
That's gonna say
actually
that's
decent
pretty
money.
good. Pretty good to recoup what half of whatever you would pay
For
that
the
guy.
number 3 overall pick, you get half the salary of a top tier player, basically.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty good in exchange.
Well, FC Cincinnati did end up taking 2 players in the draft. They took Ray Ortiz, who is a midfielder from Portland, and then they took Joris Alnive. Butchered that name. But
Nailed it.
that's another midfielder. He actually played at FIU for a while and then transferred to Indiana. They took those guys in the second round and the third round, and then obviously traded away their first pick. But point being, FC Cincinnati didn't make really any moves in the draft. Joe, put up the pronunciation. Go ahead, say that pronunciation. Scott.
Jorise Alinvi?
I was
Alinvi?
close.
Ve.
Close.
Ve? Okay.
I was close.
Alinve.
No, that's V.
Alinve.
No,
That
that's V.
Looks like V, but I mean, no.
Alinvi.
Joris Alinvi.
I was close with my. I just kind of went with a.
Dude was also born in 1995.
But with these picks, that's not even the big news this week for FC Cincinnati. They did sign the first ever Japanese designated player in MLS history. They brought in Yuya Kubo, who is now an FC Cincinnati striker. This dude, Kubo, played with the Japanese national team.
Yeah.
So this isn't like just some weird. This is a legit national player.
I can already hear the chant in my head. Yuya Kubo. Yuya Kubo. I can already hear it in my head.
It is tailor-made for chant.
Yeah, the Bailey is all fired up for this one. Definitely. Here's one thing I will say. Kubo, he likes Skyline. He's already said that he likes Skyline. So he's got one up over Joe Burrow already.
He lied.
I was going to say, there ain't no way. He was like, give me a bullet list of things that I need to know going into Cincinnati. Like, number one, say you like their chili. He's like, all right, I'm in. Like, and then from there, it's like, well, whatever. He could say whatever. It's like, yeah, I hate Bengal Tigers. 75 and 71 are a shit show.
Well, every Cincinnati fan.
Yeah, they'd be like,
yes,
yeah, actually,
you are right. Thank
they'd
you,
be like,
Yuya.
put a statue up next to Marvin Lewis statue for him. He's in. He's one of us.
He is. Wow. Did you see that
Wow.
catch? Did you see that
Wow.
catch? Did you see? I hope that was on camera. That was fantastic.
Almost a disaster.
Mike's one athletic feat ever. Saving the beer.
Wow.
It's not my one athletic feat. There was one time when I was 20 years old. My brother, he got married, and I was house sitting for him. So I had a bonfire at his house, had a party, and I tripped over the dog leash. Like, we had the dog tie out. I tripped over it, fell. But as I fell, I kept my beer straight up and didn't spill a single drop.
Again,
That
always
was-
saving
That
the
was
beer.
my one athletic feat. I fell face first and saved my beer, didn't spill a drop. Anyways, so Yuya is the big story. They add a striker. That's definitely going to help FC Cincinnati. They had Frankie Amaya last year, was their number one overall pick in the MLS Super Draft. So Frankie plus Yuya, that's a pretty decent combination. I'm interested to see how he ends up in Cincinnati, because that team needs a lot of help.
Yeah,
a
as
lot of help.
bad as an expansion here as you could get. Yeah, anybody that's capable,
Cincinnati.
sign them up.
This is the year of Japanese players in Cincinnati. We are going to kill it. Shogo and Yuya. I'm on board. Here we go.
No, seriously though, how long until there's some type of collabo? Like
I mean,
between it's a natural.
It's
like,
going to happen.
union.
It's
Yeah.
going to happen between the Reds and FC Cincinnati.
Like,
Your
I'm guessing they've
Japanese players.
already had talks.
Yeah. It probably happened before they selected Yuya, before they signed him. That's
Most
already been
likely.
happening. All right, let's get into some hockey talk. Everybody's favorite segment of the week. Scott, why don't you go ahead, do that hockey.
All right, so we're 2-1 since the last show. So we
Bow.
got that, but most importantly, Marvel weekend this weekend. Huge 3-day weekend tilt with the Marvel characters showing up.
Dude,
Subject to change.
aren't they wearing Spider-Man jerseys?
I'm so like, I believe I mentioned it last week where it was like, oh, I mentioned it to my wife and she was so lukewarm about it. I was like, all right, I guess that's not happening. Then I saw the jerseys that they were going to wear and I'm like, I think we missed the boat here because my kids are obsessed with Spider-Man.
Would you
especially
have
my
bought one? Because
youngest.
they always auction those off after the games. Would you have bought a Spider-Man jersey?
I mean,
in
I
the
had to see
auction?
how much it would go for, but
It's going to go for about $200.
probably not.
You're not a real fan.
I'm just broke.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, if I had disposable income, I'd buy one for myself, F the kids.
All right, so here's what we need to do. Everybody, go to craftbrewsports.com/shop. Buy a shirt, buy a hat, buy a hoodie, whatever you got to do. Help the show out. Get some money in Scott's pocket so that he can go to
Yes,
Marvel
that's what I'm
Weekend
talking about.
and buy a Spider-Man jersey for his kids. It's for the kids. Do it for the kids. craftbrewsports.com/shop.
Trick a lot of kids. But yeah, so
And the
Marvel.
cocaine.
The cocaine way more than the kids.
The cocaine.
Cocaine, the cocaina. But yeah,
Not the barber.
They're
They
not,
don't love the
no,
barber.
No. But they're now 23-9-6 overall. We talked about it before, where they have these feature weekends. But like before, I think it was even only like 2 games in a row. This is 3. They're playing 2 different teams though on in this 3
It's
different.
so bizarre,
Yeah,
right?
that's what I thought. It was
It's
like so weird.
weird
That they have this promotional weekend, but they play 2 different teams, and the second team they play Saturday and Sunday, and then they play a different team Friday night. Like hockey's weird like that, but the whole weekend they're like, "Hey, Marvel in your face!" Like doesn't matter who we're playing this weekend, we just got Marvel. So they play the Rush twice this weekend. They play the Comets on Friday. I mean, if you're in or around and you like anything a little bit Marvel, you should be there. I mean, if my wife would allow me, I'd be there. But I mean, I guess she just didn't care about it that much, so we're not gonna be. So. Even though my kids, if they knew at all that this existed, would be like, "Hell yeah, let's go to hockey," and they didn't even know what hockey is.
Dude, that, like, my 3-year-old will still, if I'm flipping through the channels and hockey's on, he's like, "Hockey, that's where I saw Chase and I saw Rubble." I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah.
right, because we went Paw Patrol weekend."
Well, and that's why I wanted to take them for this, because I'm like, look, my
They'd be
kids
all
have
on board.
0 clue what hockey is, but they love everything Marvel. And
Also,
if
my
you're just
kid
going
loved
there
banging
to
on the
see,
glass.
right, just going there to see all of the Marvel stuff and all of the other stuff that goes along with hockey, like I'm like, this could get him into it. Plus, I mean, I'm not a huge hockey fan, but I'd get into it if my kids were into it, and a Marvel weekend, that's good enough. Between this and the Star Wars weekend, like one or the other. But yeah, I don't think I'm gonna make it because it's just like,
What's the Cyclones goalie's name?
dude, stop. We're here every week. I don't know. He's that dude. He's that dude. I mean, because they're second in their division. They're second in their conference. So I mean, you know, he's that dude. That's who. That's how.
He was named goaltender of the month.
God. Oh, there's a lot of consonants in his name. I don't have much. That's all I got. He's really good. Hey, like many, yeah. Look at it. There it is. Like, oh God. I mean, people call him UPL, and I.
There you go. That's all you gotta say. Just say UPL.
Nah, man.
Just go with UPL.
He's just that dude.
That dude.
He's that dude.
At that dude UPL.
There you go.
He's just taking over another Cincinnati
Yeah.
fan favorite. He's
Right.
just going with that dude UPL.
He's the next that dude. But you know,
Way better than the other dad dude.
That's good. To be fair,
Has there been a goalie butt tag? Because until there's a
Brandon,
goalie butt tag.
but I'm gonna say Brandon Phillips was that dude. This is hockey. He's a white guy, so he's that dude, not that dude. You know, so there's a difference. You gotta make that distinction there. Holy crap! Is that the first ever snort?
That was the first ever snort.
I think it's a good time to get out of here. Thank you guys for listening. We just did that hockey in a spectacular fashion. It's been another week of Cincinnati style. Mike is indisposed. Thank you guys.
That dude.
That dude versus that dude.
Thank you guys for tuning in. We really appreciate it. For putting up with this BS that we're putting out every week. Be sure to subscribe, rate, review.
They're thinking now. They told me to fast forward to this. This is what they told me to forego the rest of the show for. I'm done. I'm out.
You fell for it, dummies. Thank you guys. Seriously, thank you guys for tuning in. If you have any Cincinnati fans in your life, you should totally share the show with them. Let them know what they are missing out on. They're missing out on this amazing content. Be sure to follow the show too. Hit us up at Craft B Sports. You can follow me at Mike Burlow, and you can follow Scott at ScottyK_Jr. Follow Joe at JoeGoalie4. You can hit up the drunk line with your Cincinnati hot sports takes anytime you want. 440-37-DRUNK. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Cheers, everybody.
Feel good. Real good.
Bye-bye.